Before we get started in the Dharma talk, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Dear Venerable Teacher, dear Sangha, good afternoon. So today we're going to finish up the summary of the 10 fetters. Last session, I did the first 5, so we will continue and hopefully finish the remaining second set. So hopefully you've been going through all the fetters that we've gone through, since I went into each one in pretty decent detail over the past few months, going through each one. And so since it took a few months span to go through all of them, I decided to do this summary. So this is summary part 2. So we'll do 6 through 10. And so 6 through 10 are also categorized as the larger fetters. So in 2 categories, the lower fetters and the higher fetters. The first 5 are the lower ones, the easier ones, and the last 5 are the higher fetters. And so these fetters in Buddhism are also the challenges that we may face or go through or have on our spiritual journey. And as we start to practice and become realized and have all these aha moments, and we start to transcend through the levels of enlightenment, because initially there are 4 levels of enlightenment, and the first 5 fetters will allow you to go through the first 3 levels, and eradicating the last 5 will allow you to attain arahatship, full enlightenment. But this list is also a list of another list. And so the other list that we need to go through eventually to eradicate the 10 fetters are the 37 factors of enlightenment. Those are the prerequisites to be able to have the ability and mindset in order to be able to actually challenge these fetters and eliminate them. Thus, the 37 factors are another whole discussion, so we won't worry about those now. We'll go through them eventually. So today we'll continue on. So the 6th and 7th fetters are desire for rebirth in the form realm and the formless realm. And so desire for the birth and form realm, Rupa Brahma Loka in Pali, or the form realms, also means meaning that we are continuing our bond in the cycle of birth and death of samsara. So the fetters 6 and 7 have 2 sides. Each of them have 2 sides. The first side is the actual rebirthing process, right? So in the form realm, it is depending on your state of absorption, or jhana, which is the second part. You may be reborn in a heavenly realm, right? Because in Buddhism, in Buddhist cosmology, there are 31 realms of existence. And we're realm number 4. So we're at the bottom of the barrel here. And so the heavenly realms, or the higher realms, are realms 12 through 37 for the formless. And so on the other side of the coin is the jhanas, right? The jhanas are these high levels of concentration in meditation. In concentration meditation, the jhanas are kind of the pivotal points where our meditation practice is almost mastered. And so for there are 8 levels of jhanas. There are 4 form levels, the first 4, and the formless, the second 4. And so it is said that when a meditator is in meditation in jhana, whether it's the first 4 form realms or formless realms, if they are meditating in any of those realms, and happen to die in whatever realm that they're meditating in, then they would be reborn in that realm. So it's either going to be the physical realm, right? So you would come back as a physical being but if you're born in a heavenly realm, then it is said that those that are born in those realms have an immeasurable long lifespan. But even with an immeasurable long lifespan, we are still partial to the conditions of karma. So even though you had good enough karma to end up there, your karma will eventually run out, and you'll have to be reborn in another realm to kind of reset the process. And the cycle continues and continues until we attain full alignment. The formless realm is pretty much the opposite, right? Arupa, because there's rupa, mean form, and arupa, adding the a to the Pali word makes it a negative. So arupa is the formless realms. And these are the realms without any form or body. And so in formless realms, beings are reborn without the attachment to the desires for form or sensation or any physicality, right? So it is almost just as if your consciousness is just kind of hovering around and doing its thing for a very long period of time. But again, even in this state, whether it's via meditation that we're able to achieve and get to and kind of go on a visit, or we are reborn there, regardless of the conditions, the lifespan in those realms are even longer than the lifespan in the form realms. But the main takeaway in these realms is the lack of attachment to desire, the lack of attachment to sensual desire. So anything that is caused by your senses, right? Eyes, ears, nose, touch, smell, etc. But like with jhana, the levels 5 through 8 in jhana practice, it is a very specific type of practice in order to achieve this realm, which is on here. So the Buddha added these fetters, the desire for formless and form, because of two things. One is because they are directly linked to the jhanas, right? These high states of consciousness of meditation that are extremely difficult to achieve, right, on their own, on its own. And so the Buddha added these to the fetters, at least that side of the coin to the fetters, because it is common for people who have achieved jhana, or at least the higher levels of jhana, by misinterpreting that state of mind as nirvana, as enlightenment. Because the higher level you get in jhana, the less desires and sensations and fetters and hindrances we have, right? And so because we may get to a state where it is complete bliss, right, which is one of the jhanas, the state of bliss, people often mistake that as enlightenment, when it's really not. People even mistaken being in first jhana as being in jhana, when they're really not, right? These are higher levels because they require the practitioner in any state of enlightenment you may be in, right? In the lower levels, it's easy to self-assume that you've achieved certain states of mind or certain levels of enlightenment. But the higher you go, then it requires verification. Likewise, in meditation, in jhana practice, it requires verification. You cannot say, I have achieved this, without verification from a Dharma master, teacher, or meditation teacher. And so it's on here because the Buddha did not want people to assume something when it really isn't nothing at all. Anyway, so again, these two are involved with Buddhist cosmology, which is a huge topic, and I will not be going through that. But They are also linked to the 5 skandhas, the 5 aggregates, right? So desire for form is linked to the first skandha, or aggregate of form, and the desire for formless is linked to the remaining skandhas of feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. The 8th fetter, which is conceit, or mana in Pali. Mana literally means measure, or to measure. And so as a fetter, it's generally speaking, it refers to conceit or self-pride or arrogance. And in the Buddha's higher teachings, the Abhidharma, conceit has been described as one of the 14 unwholesome mental factors, as they're associated with the 3 poisons of ignorance, greed, and anger. And so when we look at conceit, we can look at it from different points of view. But more or less, it is the measure of inferiority or superiority or inferiority complex. Right? So if we go around and say, oh, I'm better than that person, or I know more than they do, or I'm more educated, or I'm a better driver, or I'm a better eater, or a better cook, right? There's a measure here. On the opposite end, even saying they are better than me, or I'm less than they are, is also a measure. It's also conceit. Even saying we are equals is also conceit. Also a measure, because we're measuring your equality with my equality. Yes? So it's also a measure. This is not to say that people don't have differences, right? We're all unique, we're all different, it's fine. The point is to recognize the differences and not recognize that you are better or less or worse or equal to them. Right? You are who you are. I am who I am. There's no need to say, I know this much or you know that much, or I don't know this and you don't know that. There's no need for that. Right? What we just need to do is acknowledge that there are differences, that there are unique attributes and characteristics to all of us. And that's all that matters here. Even in the spiritual world, there's conceit, right? People may go around and be like, oh, have you taken precepts? Oh, you haven't taken precepts. I have 5 precepts, or I have 8 precepts, or I have 10 precepts, or I have 48 bodhisattva precepts, or you have the 250 monk precepts, right? So even in the spiritual world, there can find some conceitedness there. The 8th feather is the most fundamental way in which we identify with experience, or better yet, identify as experience. Because what happens in our daily life, right, we're always saying, or we're always going around doing things that are pleasurable to us, that are beneficial to us, right? So there's a hint of egoism and conceit, right, or the subtle version of non-self, right? It's different than self-view, the first fetter. Self-view is simply the identification with our aggregates, right? Forms, feelings, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, the 5 aggregates, right? It is using those aggregates to identify who we are, who we want to be, who we like to be, or whatever it may be, right? The external process of how we see things, the way we dress, the way we pick and choose specific things in life, what we like and what we don't like. This is all self-view. These are the things that we believe make us who we are. As we go down the list, that self-view, that non-self aspect, anatman in Buddhism, gets deeper and deeper. So at the conceit level, it's simply or eradicating conceit is the recognition of letting mind and body kind of fall away, right? Mind and body are not one, they are 2 separate things, right? But and most times they're disconnected, right? And so like in meditation, when we try to sit and meditate, we're trying to balance and connect both mind and body. Because if you're sitting in meditation and you're trying to meditate on your object of meditation, whether it's your breath or whatever, right? This is your body trying to be in the zone. But you also want the mind in the zone. So you're trying to concentrate, trying to meditate on your object of meditation, and this is letting the connection may take place, right? There's a balance between mind and body. But if you're sitting in meditation and your body is here, but you're distracted and you're thinking about what you need to do afterward or what you need to do tomorrow and your mind's out there, then your body and mind are not connected, right? There's a separation now. But releasing conceit allows us to recognize that mind and body aren't really separate. They're not something that's here and something that's here. It's not that your body in here and it's not that your body is here and then your mind's inside your body, right? Okay, I was going to go into a whole story, but I don't have time. So the point is as we go through our daily life, right? It's important, and why we emphasize mindfulness so much is because if we're unmindful in our life, then we are going to think unwholesome things, say unwholesome things, and do unwholesome things. Part of that unwholesomeness is measuring, right? And we probably do that at work all the time, right? We're measuring how well we do something compared to how well someone else does it, right? Same process, but I do it better. According to who? I mean, you may do it better, but is that really important in the grand scheme of things when you're as far as the fetters are concerned? And so be mindful of how your mind works, because part of our practice is in our minds. We think we're the masters of our mind now, but we're clearly not, right? Which is why we're all here. If you're a master of your mind, you'll be able to stop thinking at will. Can you do that? Cannot. So you're not the master of anything. And so as we recognize how the mind works and why it's triggered by certain places or things or people, right? And you ask yourself, why? Why do I like this person? Well, because of this and that. Well, why? Why? You keep asking yourself, why? Until you get to the very core reason of the instability of whatever it is that you're meditating on, or thinking about, or going through, right? And so if we become mindful like that and know why our mind is thinking the way it's thinking, or saying, or judging, or becoming biased, or discriminating, if we can figure out why it's doing that in the first place, and get to the core reason, and eradicate that reason, then it's something that will never come up again in your meditation. It will no longer be a hindrance, right? Because while in meditation, we have the 5 hindrances, right? Sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and doubt, right? These are the hindrances that cause our meditation to become unmeditative. But there are also hindrances that can be applied outside of meditation as well. And so the way we apply it outside of meditation is via mindfulness, via watching how our mind works. What is it saying? How is it reacting? Right? What are the causes of those reactions? You can ask yourself those questions. And until you get to the point where you have no reaction, where you're just experiencing, then you're starting to tear down this fetter. You're starting to eradicate it. Ninth fetter of restlessness. This fetter refers to mental restlessness. So if we go back to the 5 hindrances, right, because restlessness is also one of the hindrances. The restlessness and the hindrances is more about the physical restlessness in the body rather than the mental restlessness. Because by the time we get to the fetter, we should have already abandoned physical restlessness, right? Physical restlessness is essentially just a combination of too much energy in the body, right? You can't sit still. You're fidgeting. You're moving around. You have to do something, right? You're unable to stay tranquil. You're unable to have peace without jittering or moving or having to move around, right? Because it could be just you have too much energy that needs to be dissipated. But as a fetter, it's the mental anguish, mental restlessness of anguish. So it's literally about overthinking things, right? Worrying, having doubt, Oftentimes when we're sitting in meditation, if it's a weekend, we're thinking of what do we have to do on a Monday, right? Everyone hates Mondays. We're like, ugh, tomorrow's Monday. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to go to school, right? You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. You're making excuses of why tomorrow, Monday, is such a bad day, right? So that's restlessness. It's mental worry. We also call it the monkey mind, right, in Buddhism, where the mind is jumping from one thought to another, from one distraction to another, right? We think millions, thousands of times a day, right? But we're never truly paying attention because it just naturally happens. When we walk outside, we mentally think it's hot, or it's sunny, or it's raining, or I should put a jacket on, or I should wear shorts, or I should do this, or I should that, right? We have all these self-notations that we do throughout the day. These self-notations can end up being restless notations if we start to cling to them too much. If we start to worry about them too much, then they start agitating us and they start creating a deep sense of worry or incompleteness within ourselves. And we're unable to be at peace. And part of this is also being able to be at peace with how things are right now, which kind of bleeds into the 10th fetter of ignorance. But before I get there, so again, this is also restlessness emotionally, mentally, or physiologically. Sometimes it arises through worry or insecurity, and typically we try to find security by imagining that we can control the outcome of certain situations. But once we recognize and sense that reality, that there's no possibility of changing things as they are, for what they are, right? Because we are conditioned to seek happiness outside of ourselves, right? We live in a society where it's like, buy this, it'll make you feel pretty, or beautiful, or look rich, or sporty, or blah, blah, blah. Stupid stuff, right? Go on this vacation, you have the time of your life. Spend this much money, and you may win a dog or something. I don't know. But we're constantly being fed things that are trying to take over our happiness. They're trying to make us believe that there's happiness in those things, right? And because we grew up in that kind of society, in that kind of world where it's always feeding us things that are supposedly trying to make us happy, we don't recognize that that happiness is false, that it's impermanent. The only reason you constantly want more and more and more is because you are unhappy with the impermanence of something that brought you happiness in the first place. Think of a new car, right? Oftentimes, most people, and when they get a new car, they treat it like it's the most prized possession in the world. You keep it clean, it's tidy, there's not a speck of dust, right? You don't keep trash everywhere. But after a few months, it looks like you live in your car. Every receipt, every trash you just throw in the back seat. Straws and napkins and tissues and cups everywhere, right? It's terrible. So where is that initial happiness that you cherished about that car in the first place? It's gone. And so for some people, a way to get that same experience and those same feelings back is to get a new car. And the cycle just repeats over and over again. So anything outside of yourself that you believe brings you happiness will not bring you happiness. It will, but for how long? So is that true happiness? Hopefully the answer is no to all of you. It is not. And so true happiness is being able to recognize things as they are and accept the things as they are for what they are. So whatever the situation is, whether it's a good situation or a bad situation, most times we cannot change that. There are aspects that's an ignorance. Okay. there are aspects in our practice, in our everyday life actually, where we also feel bored. This is also a form of restlessness. Boredom is a form of restlessness. Because in restlessness, we are either trying to change things, change what is happening, right? Or avoid what is happening. And part of the avoidance is substituting that avoidance with what we believe, or what we would typically call boredom. Because what happens when you're bored? Right? What is boredom? Right? Boredom is the feeling that whatever is happening, whatever situation you're in is not enough. And so when you're bored, we typically find some meaningless activity to do, whether it's watching TV, browsing social media, calling a friend, doing something probably unproductive. All these are little aspects of boredom that we use to substitute our unsatisfactoriness with whatever is happening. We also become bored because we're uncomfortable with being with ourselves, by ourselves. Right? How long can you sit by yourself and do nothing? Five minutes? Maybe 10 minutes? But eventually you're going to get up and I can't do this, I need to do something. Yes? Probably yes. And so recognize that as well. Recognize that boredom within your restlessness. And the Buddha said on restlessness that to break this fetter, we need to accept that we are done trying to change, create, or avoid anything. The belief that falls away here is that trying to find or create a different version of what is happening now will somehow do any good. It's not that we resign ourselves to unrealistic beliefs such as permanence or always feeling good. We just aren't compelled to do anything about them any longer when we see that they are not available or true. The last fetter, ignorance, which is essentially the combination of all the other fetters into one. Ignorance, typically avidya in Pali or Sanskrit, is typically translated as ignorance, but a more correct and direct translation would be not knowing. Not knowing. And not knowing here means that what we believe is true really isn't. And this is why a lot of times our perceptions, our ideas, our biases, and ignorances, all these things, all these negative things, are what drives us to make certain decisions in life. Right? Your ignorance toward a political party, for instance, or a specific minority group, right? If we have ignorance or bias against them, then that blinds us from maybe some truth that they have. And so we believe that not associating with them or not needing them or whatever it may be is the most true thing in the world. It may be, it may not be. But ignorance is specifically telling us that we are unable to see things as they really are. We use the example of meditation a lot. So when we're meditating, for instance, right? And we're in our zone, we're just sitting there, we're concentrating on our breath, right? And the dogs start barking, or the door opens, or the AC turns on and off, or we hear people talking outside. Our typical reaction is to react to it by asking what is happening, or who it is, or why it's happening. So if we're sitting and the door opens, and we're trying to meditate, most people's reaction would be, who's that? Why are they late? Why are they interrupting our meditation? Right? We start to create stories to justify the negative feelings we feel against the person that's disturbing us. We have aversion toward that person coming in late. Right? So we create all these stories, we create excuses in order to justify those negative feelings, those unwholesome thoughts. When in reality, if we take our meditation practice and put it into practice, what we should be doing is just labeling what is happening. So the door does open, we simply label it door or sound, because that is what it is. It's not the story you give to it. It's not the excuse you're making for the person. It's simply the ability to recognize what is happening, when it's happening, as it's happening. That is the truth of reality, not the story you add to it. Right? The storytelling is something we do probably most frequently. Whether it's during meditation or in everyday life, or it's working, or in school, it's studying, we typically make up stories for things that we cannot see or hear or fully understand. If we are driving and someone cuts you off, your immediate reaction is, probably like F you or something, right? You're cussing them out. You're flipping them off. You are thinking they are the most terrible driver, that they don't know how to drive, that they don't know what they're doing. You're making excuses, again, to justify what they did. You're making excuses to justify how you feel about what they did. But in reality, you don't know why they cut you off. They truly could just be a terrible person. But, on the other hand, maybe someone in the car is giving birth. Maybe someone's bleeding out. Maybe they need to get someone in a hurry. You don't know. Right? Literally, it's ignorance, not knowing. And so since we do not know, why are you making something up? What is the reason? The reason is we are averse, we're practicing aversion in what happened to us, to our experience. We also need to know that the process of thinking, right, if we go back kind of to the 6th and 7th fetter, the process of thinking is formless. There's no substance to just thinking. But the content of that thinking is what is form. If we take math, for instance, right? True math is just 2 plus 2 equals 4. Yes? But in school, when we're young, they're teaching us, well, if Johnny has 2 apples and Mary has 2 apples, how many apples do you have? Right? So we're adding substance to something that does not need substance. If we took out Mary and John and just said 2 and 2, it's still the same thing. But we don't need those extra buffers. You don't need to add anything extra to reality. In Buddhism, the 3 fundamental misconceptions that are permanence, substance, and satisfactoriness can somehow be found or known. So we may know that at a conceptual level that they can't be found, right? If we just think about things in general, we know that things are not permanent. We know that not everything can bring us lasting happiness, right? But at a fundamental and subconscious level, we choose to ignore that. So this is where ignorance comes in. We're ignoring reality for what we want to happen instead. And so we try to find situations that these 3 aspects don't apply. And so if this brings impermanence and unsatisfactoriness, then I'm going to find something else that does have permanence and satisfactoriness. That's a waste of time. But we do that all the time. Right? If you go to a store and you're looking for a specific brand, and they don't have it, not everybody, but some people freak out, right? And we're like, well, I can't buy anything else. I have to buy this brand. Or they look for a more luxury brand to substitute. invoice some money, just FYI. Okay, I'm running out of time. The good thing, at least, by the eradication of all these fetters is that suffering finally stops. Right? Suffering is essentially our trying to find a nice word to say. Suffering is always existing, right? It's always there. It's part of our life. We're going to suffer whether you like it or not. But suffering in Buddhism doesn't mean like physical torture or whatever, right? It can be, right? If someone hits you or tortures you, that's clearly suffering. But that's not the type of suffering that the Buddha talks about. Dukkha is often translated as suffering, but a more correct translation would be unsatisfactoriness. That we are unsatisfied with the conditions that we currently have. And because we're unsatisfied with the conditions that we currently have, we try to find conditions that do satisfy us. Right? We try to find conditions that are satisfactory, that are permanent, that do bring happiness. But again, whatever you think brings happiness now will not last. The happiness will not last. You may say that, oh, I've had this doll since I was a child, and I've loved it my whole life. This is permanent. This love that I have from this doll is permanent. True, but if you die, that love for that doll also dies. So it cannot be permanent. It may be permanent during your lifetime, but even your lifetime is impermanent as well. Because you're just going to die and be reborn. So the cycle continues. But when we say that suffering stops, this doesn't mean that if you hit your hand or head on something and it won't hurt. Obviously it will hurt. But the attachment, the clinging we have behind that pain and behind the excuses we give for the pain is gone. We no longer apply, oh, this is what caused me pain. Instead, this is pain. It doesn't matter where the pain came from or how it started, how it occurred. The pain is still there regardless of you knowing those questions and answers or not. So instead of my hand hurts, I have a headache or this or that, this is pain. This is how it is. It is what it is. Which is my mantra, as most of you know. Another thing that we need to kind of apply toward our spiritual journey is within all these feathers and within all the hindrances, there are expectations. And it's these expectations that kind of fuel what causes the hindrances and the fetters to arise. Because when we have expectations, that means we have this idea, this vision of how things should be, how people should be, how people should act or react, right? So if you have an expectation of something, whether it's I expect my day to go well, or I expect my job to be smooth sailing, or I expect this person to show up to my birthday party or my wedding, whatever it is. If you have these expectations, and then the moment of the occurrence happens, and you expect, and it doesn't meet your expectations, then we suffer. Oh, this person shouldn't have done this. They shouldn't have said that. This should have been like this and not like that. Right? We suffer because the idea, the belief that we wanted something to be a specific way was not met. And then we lounge over that for who knows how long. Sometimes for days, weeks, years even. People get hung up on things and not able to let it go simply because it did not meet their expectation. If you had no expectation in the first place, and you allow things to be, allow them to happen as they happen, when they happen, then there's no expectation to be let down from. But it is what it is. Whatever happened, happened. Sure, I wish I would have preferred it a different way or a different outcome, but it didn't happen, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes when our expectations are met, we kind of revert back to restlessness, where we're trying to rush through different scenarios or different paths in order to make what we wanted happen, instead of just letting it be. I always joke that the temple's roof is technically on backwards, right? As it was being built, and the recognition was made that the roof is on backwards, which I don't even know how that even happens when you have blueprints, but again, ignorance, restlessness. It is what it is. That's expectation, right? Normally, you have an expectation when you have a blueprint, a literal instruction manual telling you how to do something. You would think it would be followed, right? Apparently not in our case. So if we had to become so entrenched with that unsatisfactoriness, with that anger, with that disgust that the building or the roof was put on backwards, we would have suffered immeasurably. Instead, we're like, you know what? It is what it is. It's already halfway on here. To take it off and put it back and correct everything would cost more than we deserve to want to pay for. So why worry? Why care? It is what it is. It makes no difference. Anybody notice that the roof's on backwards? No. You don't notice. Now you know now because I told you. If I didn't tell you, you would have never known. Right? So who cares if it's on backwards? Just use that as your mantra. It is what it is. If it doesn't happen your way, it doesn't happen your way. Who cares? Maybe it wasn't meant to be. Okay, stop talking, more time. What are your questions, concerns, emotional outbursts? We spent, 5 months on the Fetters so far? 5-6 months? So next time we'll go back to the Dhammapada, which is how we ended up here in the first place, because the last chapter we covered was specifically about the Buddha's disciples attaining enlightenment by eradicating the fetters. So I thought I would talk about the fetters. So now that we're done with the fetters, we're going to go back to the Dhammapada, which is one of the most important Buddhist texts that there are. And I'm sure there'll be many other lists within the Dhammapada that we will stray away from and go to and go back to the Dhammapada. So Dhammapada itself is going to take a couple of years to fully go through, because I only go about 2 or 3 verses at a time. There's 26 chapters. So it's going to take some time. But at least during that time, there'll be many other lists that we'll cover, like the 37 factors of enlightenment, a little bit more about the jhanas. Well, I won't go through that. But there are many other important lists that will come through. If you've been reading about Buddhism at least, or sort of familiar with it, you'll know that Buddhism is full of lists. There are lists within lists within lists. Within lists. So 10 fetters is a list from a list. 10 fetters is a list from dependent origination. Dependent origination is a list from the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is a list from the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is a list from the Dharma seals. Dharma seals is a list from the True Truths. The True Truths is from enlightenment. So it goes on and on and on. But the lists help us remember the items on the list. At least for me it does. So when you say Eightfold Path, I know there's at least 8, right? For Noble Truth, there's at least 4. Okay. So I will stop there. If there's no questions, then we will transfer the merit and go to chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we have accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. It is the last week of the month of Ulambana, so we'll be chanting the Ulambana Sutra for the last time. Page 216. Yeah, we'll start from Inviting the Bell on page 216.
Yeah, 216. Inviting the bell. Buddhist
speech and mind in perfect oneness, I send my heart along with the sound of the. May the hearers awaken from forgetfulness and transcend all anxiety and sorrow. Listen, listen, this wonderful brings me back to my true home.
Incense offering. In
gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space, and may it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting our careful efforts, our wholehearted mindfulness, and the fruit, understanding slowly ripening. All beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home.
Opening verse. The
incense in the censer now is burning. All the Dharma realm in every auspicious clouds appearing, our sincere intention thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body. Homage to the incense cloud canopy, Bodhisattva and great Bodhisattvas.
mercies for bowing. We bow together. Om
To the eternally abiding Buddha, the Supreme, insatiably Sangha throughout the Dharma realm and the realm, space and 3 periods of time. To the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, Maitreya, honored future Buddha, Manjushri, great wisdom Bodhisattva, universal great conduct Bodhisattva, all Dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattvas, and the glorious mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
Om
to Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate bliss, Avalokiteshvara, great compassion, Bodhisattva, great strength, Bodhisattva, earth sword, great vow, Bodhisattva, and the assembly of great pure sea-like Bodhisattvas.
Please sit down. The great compassion mantra.
Namo, great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo, great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo, great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
Namo
Nattrayaya, Namo Aryavalokitesvaraya, Bodhisattvaya, Mahasattvaya, Mahakarunikaya, Om Sarvaravaye, Sudanadasya, Namaskritva Imamarya Valokiteshvara Ramdava Namo Narakindi Tri Mahavaswami Sarvarhatu Shubham Ajiyam Sarva Sattva Namo Vastava Namo Vakamavitatu Tadyatha Om Avaloke Loka karate karate hiri Mahabodhisattva sarva sarva mala mala mahi mahi hridayam koro koro karmam doro doro vishati mahavishati dara dara diri nishvaraya chala chala mama vaimala oktelehi shina shina harsham prashari vishva vishvam prashaya holo holo mara holo holo hri sara sara siri siri soro soro bodhiya bodhiya bodhaya bodhaya Maitreya Narakindi Swamina Vayamana Swaha Siddhaya Swaha Mahasiddhaya Swaha Siddhayoge Shvaraya Swaha Narakindi Swaha Maranara Swaha Sira Simha Mokaya Swaha Sarva Mahasiddhaya Swaha Chakra Siddhaya Swaha Padma Kasaya Swaha Narakindi Vagalaya Swaha Mavari Sankaraya Swaha Namo Ratna Trayaya Namo Arya Palokite Shvaraya Swaha Om Siryanto Mantra Padaya Swaha. My body is bringing morning light in concentration. My heart is at peace. A half smile is born on my lips. This is a new, and I vow to go through it in mindfulness. The sun of wisdom has risen, shining in every direction. Noble Sangha, diligently bring your mind into meditation. Namo Shakyamunaye Bodhaya. Namo Shakyamunaye Bodhaya. Namo Shakyamunaye.
As he's opening his sutra, the
unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Lambana Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo Lambana Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo Lambana Assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The Buddha speaks the Ulambana Sutra. Thus I have heard at one time the Buddha dwelt Ashravasti in the garden of the factor of orphans, and the solitary Mahamodgalayana had just obtained the sixth penetration and wished to cross over his father and mother to repay their kindness for raising. Thus using his way, he regarded the world and saw that his deceased mother had been born among the hungry. Having neither food nor drink, she was but skin and bones. Mahamodgalayana felt deep pity and sad, filled a bowl with food and went to provide for his mother. She got the bowl, screened it with her left hand, and with her right hand made a fist of food, but before it entered her, it turned into burning coals which could not be eaten. Mahamodgalayana called out and wept sorrowfully and hastened to return to the Buddha to set forth all of this. The Buddha said, "Your mother's offense, deep and firmly rooted, you alone do not have enough power. Although your filial sounds move heaven and earth, the heaven spirits, the earth spirit, twisted demons, and those outside the way, Brahmins, and the four heavenly king gods are also with sufficient strength. The awesome spiritual power of the assembled Sangha of the 10 directions is necessary for liberation to be attained. I shall now speak a Dharma rescue which causes all those in difficulty to leave worry and suffering, and to eradicate obstacles from offense. The Buddha told Modgalayana, the 15th day of the 7th month is the Pravadana day for the Sangha of the 10 directions, for the sake of fathers and mothers of 7 generations, as well as for fathers and mothers of the present who are in distress. You should prepare an offer of clean basins full of hundreds of flavors, and the 5 fruits and other offerings of incense, oil, beds and bedding, all the best of the world to the greatly virtuous assembled Sangha of the 10 directions. On that day all the holy assembly, whether mountains practicing dhyana samadhi, or obtaining the 4 fruits of the way, or walking beneath trees, or using the independence of the 6 penetration to teach and transform sound hearers, and those enlightened to condition or provisionally manifesting as bhikshus, when in fact they are great bodhisattvas, on the 10th ground, all complete with pure precepts and ocean-like virtue of the holy, should gather in a great assembly, and all of like mind receive the pravadana. If one thus makes offerings to these pravadana sanghas, one's present father and mother, parents of 7 generations past, as well as the 6 kinds of close relatives, will escape from the 3 paths of suffering, and at the time attain release. Their clothing and food will spontaneously up. If the parents are still alive, they will have wealth and blessings for 100 years. Parents of 7 generations will be born in the heavens, transformationally born. They will independent enter the celestial flower light and experience limitless bliss. At the time the Buddha commanded Sangha of the 10 directions to recite mantras and vows for the sake of the donor's family, for parents of 7 generations. After practice dhyana concentration, the Sangha accepted when they first received the basin, they placed it before the Buddha. When the assembled Sangha had finished the mantras and vows, they received the food. At the time the Bhikshu Modgadayana and the assembly of great Bodhisattvas were all extremely delighted, and the sorrowful sound of Modgadayana's crying ceased. At the time Modgadayana's mother obtained liberation. 1 kalpa of suffering as a hungry ghost, Modgadayana addressed the Buddha and said, "This disciple's parents have received the power of the merit and virtue of the triple jewel because of the awesome spiritual assembled Sangha. If in the future the Buddha's disciples practice filially by offering to the Ulambana basins, will they be able to cross over their present fathers and mothers, as well as those of 7 generations past?" The Buddha replied, "Good indeed, I am happy you asked that question. I just wanted to speak about that, and now you have also asked about good man, if bhikshus, bhikshunis, kings, crown princes, great ministers, great officials, cabinet members, the 100 ministers, and the tens of thousands of citizens practice compassionate filial conduct for the sake of the parents who bore them, as well as for the sake fathers and mothers of 7 lives past, on the 7th month, the day of the Buddha's delight, the day of the Sangha's pravara. They all hundreds of flavors of foods in the Ulambana basins and offer them to the Pravadana Sangha of the 10 directions. They should vow to cause the length of their present fathers and mothers' lives to reach 100, without illnesses, without sufferings, afflictions, or worries, and also vow to cause 7 generations of fathers and mothers to leave the sufferings of the hungry ghosts, to be born among humans and gods, and to have blessings and bliss without. The Buddha told all the good men and good women, those disciples of the Buddha who cultivate filial con should in thought afterthought constantly recall their present fathers and mothers as well as the fathers and mothers of 7 lives past, and for their sakes perform the offering of the Hulambana basin to the Buddha and the Sangha, and thus repaid being kindness of the parents who raised and nourished them at the time the Bhikshu Moggallana and the fourfold assembly of disciples, hearing what the Buddha said, practiced with delight. Namo Moggallana Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Namo Moggallana Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Namo Moggallana Bodhisattva Mahasattva.
Paramita, the
Bodhisattva Avalokita, while moving in the discourse of Prajna Paramita, shed light on the 5 skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, he overcame ill-being. Listen, Shariputra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, form is not other than empty, emptiness is not other than form. The same is true with feelings, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Listen, Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore in emptiness there is neither form nor feelings, no perception, nor mental formations, nor consciousness, no eye or ear or nose or tongue or body or mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no object of mind, no realms of elements, no interdependent origins, and no extinction of no ill-being, no cause of ill-being, no end of ill-being, and no path, no understanding, no attainment, because attainment the Bodhisattva's ground in perfect paramita, no obstacles for their minds. Having no obstacles, they overcome fear, liberating themselves forever from illusion and realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas in the past, present, and future arrive at Anuttara Samyak Sambuddhi. Therefore one should understanding is the equal mantra, the destroyer of ill-being, the incorruptible truth, the mantra Prajna Paramita. Claim Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Swaha Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Swaha Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Swaha. Namo Amitabhaya Tathagata Tadyata Amrita Bhavi Amrita Siddham Bhavi Amrita Vikranti Amrita Vikranta Gamini Gagana Kirtaka Kare Swaha Namo Amitabhaya Tathagata Tadyat Amrita Bhavi Amrita Siddham Bhavi Amrita Vikranti Amrita Gamini Gagana Kirta Kare Swaha Namo Amitabhaya Tathagata Tadyat Amrita Bhavi Amrita Siddham Bhavi Amrita Vikranti Amrita Vikrant Gamini Gagana Kirta Kare Swaha.
The true refuge. I take
refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of love. I refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness.
Dwelling
in the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty. In the dwelling in the refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many doors on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining light that supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction.
Taking
refuge in the Buddha, in myself I aspire to help all people recognize their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love, taking refuge in the Dharma. In myself I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation, taking refuge in the Sangha. In myself I aspire to help all people build fourfold community, to embrace all beings and support their transformation.
Sharing the merit,
reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness gives rise to benefit without limits. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path.